in your beliefs. And could you pull that line over for me, Olivia and Leah? You're influenced by situations and what other people think. You do not come up with everything you think on your own. There's influence coming from elsewhere. One of the influences is described as the fundamental attribution error. Most people, when they're trying to explain other people's behavior, overestimate personality factors and underestimate the influence of the situation. This is especially true in Western societies. It's not as much a factor in Eastern society. But in Europe, in America, if somebody does something bad, you usually go straight to the personality. You know, if they say, you know, why'd she cheat on that test? Oh, she's a bad person. She's dishonest. You know, why is he acting that way? He's always that way. He's mean. You always talk about the person, the personality. You don't talk about as much about the situation. You hardly ever say, you know, why'd she cheat on that test? Well, her parents are putting all this. She's got to get an A in this class, or she's not allowed to drive, and the class is real difficult. And Mr. Willis his tests are impossible. You usually put it on the person's personality, not the situation they're in.
Are you encouraging us to cheat?
No, I'm just saying. When you're talking about other people's behavior, that's often what you do. So, in reality, they've shown that the situation can be very powerful. And a lot of people would behave the same way as others under the same situation. The fundamental attribution error can often lead to something that we call blaming the victim. Actually, I'll talk about that a little later when we talk about the just world hypothesis. We'll get to that. Why is Aurelia behaving like a dork? This is from a picture in a thing in your book, page 324. Something kind of funny about this. In your book, what's it say under attributions on page 324?
Dimwit.
Why is Aurelia behaving like a dimwit? They changed it from dork to dimwit.
Why?
You know why? Most kids don't know this. Dork means penis. Huh? Did y'all know that? And whoever wrote the original book didn't know that. And in the new edition of the book, they changed it to dimwit. I remember when I read that, I thought, wait a second, that's kind of racy there. So, why is it, and they still use, do they still say dork? No? That's an old, such a dork. We used to say that when we were kids, we didn't know what it meant. Why is Aurelia behaving like a dork? Hey, situational, she's under pressure. Dispositional, she's self-involved and clueless. So the fundamental attribution error is choosing the dispositional and ignoring the situation. Important psychological term that you will be tested upon. Make sense? Self-serving bias. This is something you tend to do when explaining your own behavior. The tendency to choose attributes that are favorable to oneself. If one does something bad, situational attributes are chosen. If one does something good, dispositional attributes are chosen. If somebody asks you why you cheat on the test, you're very unlikely to go to say something wrong about yourself. Choose a dispositional attribute. To say, I'm a bad person. Why did you cheat on the test? I'm not a very good person. You usually say, no, my parents are making me study. They say, I got to get an A, and And I didn't have time because I got home from the tennis match so late, and what was I to do? But when you're explaining something good about yourself, you tend to choose dispositional attributes. Why did you help out in charity the other day? So I'm a good person. That's just the way I am. That's the way I do things. You usually say stuff like that rather than, well, Miss Byers was begging me to go, and they didn't have anyone else, so I decided I'd go. Didn't want to. You don't say anything like that. See what I'm saying? We call that the self-serving bias. Think about that when you're explaining reasons for things, if you're doing that. Most people tend to do that. There's an experiment you could do. I guess it's too late to change your experiment now. But you could ask people questions and see if they answer in dispositional or situational answers. The just world hypothesis, the need to believe that the world is fair and that good people are rewarded and bad people are punished. That's called the just world hypothesis. People tend to have an idea that the world is fair. And so if Tiger Woods is caught doing bad things, you tend to say, well, he's probably a bad person. And it's not situational. But if somebody's doing good things, you tend to say they're a good person. And so if somebody's given a lot to charity, you tend to say, well, that's a good person. If somebody helps an old lady across the street, well, that's a good person. Well, it's not always the case. But we tend to say good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. People think well about a lot of the stars out there and then find out later that they're not as good a person as they thought. Tiger Woods is an example of that. He was this great golfer. We think he must be this superstar, and as it turns out, he wasn't so great in all aspects. So that's the just world hypothesis at play. And this, related to the others, leads to what I was about to talk about earlier, blaming the victim. If somebody is, if somebody is murdered or raped or something like that, crime committed against them, a lot of people will usually blame the victim somehow because of the just world hypothesis. They think that if something bad happened, that this person must be bad in some way, if something bad happened to them. And it's often done subconsciously, but if woman gets raped, they say, what was she doing out that late? What was she doing dressed like that? Or something of the sort. They tend to think, well, something bad happened to this person. She must have something bad about her. And usually it's a connection that's made subconsciously. And it's related to the just world hypothesis. And you can make it both ways. If something good happens to somebody, people tend to think this person must be good. Your attitudes about things can be influenced. And the media does this all the time. One thing is called the familiarity effect. People feel more positive toward anything they've been exposed to repeatedly. And there's been lots of experiments that show this is true. Have you ever heard a song and you hear it the first time and you're like, that's okay, and then you hear it a few more times and, oh, hey, that's a good song. The more you're exposed to it, the better it gets. They did one experiment where they just said words to somebody. And the words had no sense to them. They were nonsensical words, like greed, or flu, or blah. And they asked people to rate these words on a scale of 1 to 10, how they liked them. And people gave them ratings, numbers. And then they came back later and asked them a new set of words, and people would rate those words. And they noticed that words that they had been exposed to before always got higher ratings. And the more you expose someone to the words, even if they don't make any sense, the higher ratings they get. That's the familiarity effect. I have a commercial here that uses it.
Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, available at Walgreens. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, apply directly to the forehead. Head on, available at Walgreens. New, from the makers of Head On, introducing Activon. Arthritis pain? Activon. Apply directly where it hurts. Activon Arthritis, available at Walgreens.
One of the most successful commercials ever. That one right there. How about that? Head On sold millions. You could probably Google it and figure out how many, but millions of units. It does nothing. They aren't saying it does anything.
It doesn't apply directly.
It's just like a waxy substance. And it doesn't do a thing.
Wow.
But they repeat it over and over, you notice? It's just the familiarity effect. And after you see that commercial a few times, you're like, yeah, head on. You got to get some of that. Apply it to the foot.
Directly.
And I remember when I first saw that commercial, I'm like, that is so annoying. And after a while, you're kind of smiling. You're like, it's kind of funny. They just keep saying it. I never bought any, but that's all it takes, apparently.
It does absolutely nothing.
Nope, it has nothing in it that does anything. If you go to their website, you'll find that they say that it does stuff, but studies have shown that none of that is true. But in the commercial, they never say it does anything. Yeah. Yeah.
Technically different lines.
Yeah.
No, they're not making. I mean, there's nothing illegal about selling something. The validity effect, the tendency of people to believe that a statement is true or valid simply because it has been repeated many times. Hitler used this over and over. The Jews are the problem. The Jews are the problem. Get rid of the Jews. And once you say it enough, people start to believe it. And just because something is said a lot doesn't mean that it's true. And those two are obviously closely related. But there's a tendency to believe that. So advertising uses this, just like that commercial. You'll see just things, they repeat it over and over. And that has a real effect. It makes people believe that the product is good. It makes people buy the product. Anyone here want to go into advertising? No? Michael?
Yeah, sure.
A lot of money in advertising. And a lot of psychology. This is all kind of common sense stuff.
I don't have it.
Y'all know what cognitive dissonance is? I've already talked about that. Anyone here? Cognitive dissonance? Two conflicting ideas in the head at the same time. If you have two conflicting ideas in your head at the same time, you'll probably change your attitudes about one of them to relieve the cognitive dissonance.
How is that different from dialectic?
Dialectic thinking?
Yeah.
Dialectic thinking is when you make a list here and a list here, like pros and cons of some decision that you're going to make. So it's the same in that there are two opposing things, but in dialectic reasoning, you're just trying to decide on a course of action. In dialectic thinking, in cognitive dissonance, you're faced with two totally opposing ideas. I love Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is a great person, you were thinking. Wait a minute. He cheated on his wife. Now I have two opposing ideas in my head. What am I going to do to resolve that cognitive dissonance? I'm going to do one of two things. What do you think they would be?
Well, he's cheating under the circumstances.
Say that the cheating isn't as bad. That, oh, he's still good. The cheating wasn't so everybody cheats, or, you know, it wasn't really cheating. His wife was mad. You know, you can come up with something that way. It's called rationalizing. Say that the cheating wasn't that bad, or what's the other direction you can go? Tiger Woods isn't that great. You can change that idea. It depends how much you have invested. If you have really invested a lot of time and energy into thinking Tiger Woods is great, you're very unlikely to change that idea. So you're very likely to go and change your idea to the cheating wasn't that bad. Or the media is just blowing this whole thing up, or he didn't really cheat, or something like that. It depends. If you've invested, you know, a kid with Tiger Woods posters all over his room is very unlikely to start thinking that Tiger Woods is a bad person. So they go the other way. They say, well, probably something's wrong. They're probably blowing this whole thing up, or he didn't do it, or, you know, that kind of thing. So you see that's different than dialectical reasoning, trying to come up with coercive action. So if you want to influence the way someone's thinking, you just repeat an idea over and over. You can also endorse your product by an admired or attractive person. If somebody who everyone admires says something, you have a tendency to think the same way. So advertising uses that. They get people who are, you know, actors or movie stars, whatever, to endorse their products. LeBron James or Tiger Woods, that backfired on him a little. Association of the message with a good feeling. You often see, you know, somebody, here's your product, and then somebody's coming up out of a pool, or they're sitting by the beach. And when you see that, you get a little good feeling, and you tend to associate seeing that product with a little bit of a good feeling. And then when you see it in the store, you see the product, your brain gives you a little of a good feeling because it remembers from the commercial the beach or coming up out of the pool, and so you get these good associations. And so you can influence other people's attitudes that way. And that's the whole idea of advertising, is to try and influence someone to buy your product. There's another side of influencing someone's attitude. It's scientifically called coercive persuasion, and in layman's terms, it's called brainwashing. Have you ever heard of that? They took old Vietnam prisoners of war and they brainwashed them into thinking that America is bad. How can you do that? How can you take a soldier who fought for America and get him thinking that the United States is a bad place? You can actually do it. There are steps to it that they figured out how to do things. First, you put the person under physical or emotional stress. You got to really stress the person out. When they're trying to brainwash someone, they make them real tired, or don't let them sleep. Torture them. Person's problems are reduced to one simple explanation, repeated often. Notice the repeated often. We just learned about that. The more you hear something, the more you tend to think it's true. Your government is bad. The United States has made you come over to kill people, over and over. Some new leader offers unconditional love, acceptance, and attention. There's some figurehead that will offer, if you follow me, everything's going to be great. I will love you. And this doesn't only happen in prisoners of war. There are cults out there where this happens all the time. On page 329, they show one of the cults. And you think, well, I could never be persuaded to be a member of some cult who has this radical way of thinking. There's all sorts of cults out there. And there's people in them. So how do they get in them? Are they that much different than you and I are? You often get, when you get with a group, you get a new identity. The cult will give you a new name. The person is subjected to entrapment. Often, they start you with little things. Yeah, come on to one of our meetings. It'll be fun. You just come for a minute. You can leave whenever you want. And then the next time, come on. This time, stay for longer at our meeting. This time, wear the robe like we wear. Yeah, it'll be cool. We'll have a little party. This time, you got to go up to the front. And you got to bow to this guy. And so they get you further and further invested. Question?
My uncle joined a cult.
Did he?
Yeah, and he wound up giving like his life savings to it and stuff.
Did he really? What was
my
the cult?
parents had to lock him in a closet until he was sane again.
Wow, did that work?
Yeah.
It's kind of a radical solution.
Well,
What was the cult?
He was giving them everything,
Yeah.
so they kind of had to do something. I don't remember.
Don't remember?
They weren't
Yeah,
rich.
these things are real. And you have to be on guard against things like that. The person's access to information is controlled. Often the cult will not let you hear opposing viewpoints. That's one of the most important things. You cannot listen to anyone outside your group. And so people who join these cults don't hear the other side of things. Don't hear why their thinking is not logical. And so we call that coercive persuasion. So you should always guard against this. Look at these things. If you're ever placed under, if you ever see something like this, there's never one good solution to big problems. There's always pros and cons about things. And, for major issues. And so, if some group is saying that we'll solve your problems this way, it's this easy, you got to think, well, if it was that easy, why isn't everyone doing it that way? There's often reasons why not everyone's a member of this group or cult or something. So be careful out there. I want to finish this video on zoophobia. I think this video is really good because it shows how to cure some people of psychological illnesses. If you have a fear of something, how many here have a phobia? Afraid of dogs or heights or... Most everybody has something.
Cockroaches.
I don't know what it is.
And it's interesting to note that in any case, they can fix this by these exposure techniques. I'm scared of heights. If I go up on a high roof, even in a virtual reality program, imagine being high, I get some stress, but then I'm given candy or hugs or something good. I start to associate a good feeling with the height, not a bad feeling, and you get rid of your phobias. It's a good way. It's a real way. It really works. Yeah. Yes.